Today is our final mating nets installment in the Patterns Everyone Must Know video series. What we're going to be doing is sort of tying up other mating nets and different attacking formations against the king particularly that I guess I couldn't quite classify under any of the other themes that we broke down in the previous 4 videos on mating nets. We talked about ones that particularly centered around the minor pieces and the rook, and then the way the pieces coordinate together against a weakened fianchettoed position. But we're going to do the mating nets here today, and let's jump right in. I guess I would classify today's video again attacking the castled position and the uncastled king. And we've already, obviously every mating net you see, I guess you could say, is attacking the castle position and the uncastled king no matter what, but they were particularly themed around, different things, like the Anastasia's mate had to do with the knight, and then we talked about the weakened fianchetto position, so they all had a sort of a more particular, more specific theme behind them, and these themes are a little bit more general. Some of them are not necessarily mating patterns, but rather attacking formations that are very common against a particular setup for your opponent. So before I show the first one, which I would classify as, the first category here, we're gonna look at Legal's mate and the Fischer trap, as well as other sacrifices on e6 and f7. I didn't even know that one of them was named after Bobby Fischer, the Fischer trap, so everyone learned something here today. But before I show you Legal's mate, in terms of a position that's very similar to it, I'm going to show you the famous game that occurs from the Filroy defense, which is e4, e5, knight f3, d6, not considered the most, at the highest level, not considered the most effective way for black to develop in the opening. Most commonly, white is playing d4 on move 3 to punish this move these days, but here we have bishop to c4, and after knight to c6, knight to c3, which of course are perfectly fine moves for everybody. Black has a little bit of trouble in this position because if he plays knight to f6, there's already ideas very similar to 2 knights and a fried liver variation where this is a major problem. And so if players play h6, that's a significant waste of tempo in some lines, and white might immediately try to open the center. And so the correct move here for black would be a move like bishop to e7 to prevent knight to g5. And after white makes a natural move like castles, black can now play f6, as knight to g5 can easily be met by castles, defending the pawn twice with the rook and the king. But this game is not designed to show the best defense, and this is not an openings video. It's designed to show the Legal's mate and the opening that it can occur from. Here in this game, we're following black played bishop g4, and after h3, black's best option was probably to simply give up the bishop pair, which is already a very frustrating thing to do, as white will be happy with the bishop pair and is immediately in a situation where checkmate is threatened. After stopping it, white can develop naturally, and even a tempo like this, the queen retreats, probably can't make up for the fact that black is simply worse here. With white having the bishop pair, white can castle and quickly play for f4, attacking in the direction of his pawn formation, which is a strategical pattern to be aware of, so a little bit of foreshadowing. Always want to attack in the direction of your pawn chain. And white is just much better. But in this game, black played the move bishop to h5, the only game we're looking at. And the brilliant move here, if you want to pause your videos and try to solve it, you can, is the move knight takes e5, double exclam of Iach. And Legal's mate is based on taking advantage of the weakened f7 squares, as is the other initial patterns we're going to get into in the Mating Nets 5 video here. In this position, black's best option is probably to take back the knight with either his knight or the pawn. In both cases, white ends up coming out ahead very clearly, this very common double attack. White picks up the knight, is up a pawn with absolutely at a high level. This position is probably just lost for black. Just down a pawn for nothing to show for it, and is worse on top of it. So after knight takes e5, instead of taking back with the pawn or knight, which again would just be down a pawn with a much worse position, black can take the queen on d1, white plays bishop takes f7, after king to e7, delivers the goods with knight to d5 checkmate. As they say, the eagle has landed. This is Legal's mate, the first example of a weakened f7 or a weak f7/e6 tactics and mating net patterns we're going to see in today's video. And let's go ahead and move on to our second example. The second example involving weak f7 square tactics / mating nets is the one we see here in front of us. Again, if you haven't paused your video and tried to solve it, that's a you problem. As we've said in this series, please remember to do so and always put your best foot forward. One of the ways to take advantage of this position, black's development / neglect of his weakened square, is to play a tactic that wins material. The other one is more in the style of going for a mating net. The first one is bishop takes f7 check. After king takes f7, knight to e5 check. This discovered check is a very common way to take advantage of these weakened squares, as we saw in the Gauss mate, just another pattern to be aware of. The king moves, and we capture the bishop on g4, ending the position up a pawn. Black has lost his right to castle and is completely lost in this position with best play. The other way to do it is to play the move knight to e5 immediately. This move unleashes the discovery against the bishop immediately, threatening to win a piece. And if black takes d1, obviously we have bishop takes f7 checkmate, very similar to the Gauss. The other thing black might try is bishop h5 to defend the pawn, but that would fall to queen takes h5, sacrificing the queen, as the queen always loves it when she can give herself up for checkmate. Has no problem with that. And the only other move black could do to try to save material and save checkmate would be bishop to e6, which is the reason why you could argue that bishop takes f7 check immediately might be better, as this position, of course, is very, very good for white. Much better, but black still maintains the right to castle and is not completely lost, I would say. So probably from the beginning position, we would say that this is the best move for white. Winning material, though knight e5 is another way to try to execute the mating net style of exposing the f7 weakness. Although, again, it doesn't totally work if they play the move bishop d6. White would be much better, but black is not lost yet. Let's look at another one. Our second example shows a common deflection tactic which occurs around the weakened f7 square. Very simple. If you pause your clocks and try to solve it, then you're the man or the woman or the woman or the man. Doesn't really matter. The fact is that you're awesome, which I know is difficult, but you're awesome. So give yourself another pat on the back. Wow, we're all just loving each other today. Anyway, bishop takes f7 check, king takes f7, queen takes d8, winning the queen. Very common way, again, not necessarily mating net. As I said, some of the ones we've fit into the last segment here are not officially mating nets, but they all have to do with the theme that we're talking about right now, which is the weakened f7 square, the weak f7 square, and tactics that occur around it. So we started with Legals, did another one to follow up, and now we have another one, which is a deflection tactic that wins on the spot. Let's do another one. This next one that takes advantage of the weakened f7 square and weakened d6 squares, the beginning of getting into the Fischer traps, is one of my favorite. The move for white is bishop takes f7 check, double exclam or just one exclam, depending on how frisky you feel. And after king takes f7, we have knight to g5 check. The idea here is that retreating the king to e8 would be the only way to avoid the immediate attacks that are about to follow, and that would allow knight to e6, instantly trapping the queen. King to f8 allows knight to e6, as well as the next move you're going to see, which is the move queen to b3, following up with an immediate checkmate on f7. We don't even need the queen anymore. We don't want a piece. We want the whole thing, as they say. And so this tactic is another very common thing to be aware of, and it has to do particularly with recognizing the clustered development on the king side, or sorry, the queen side, where black's pieces are sort of wrestling each other for squares. And whenever you notice a cramped position with an uncastled king, these types of tactics do occur. So again, that's the little tip we're taking out of this pattern, and a very good one to recognize and know. Finally, it should be noted that if we make this sack and give check and the king runs to g6, there are multiple ways to win here, including the immediate queen to d3 check or queen to c2 check. And after the king moves, bringing the queen to f5 should be enough to deliver checkmate within a few moves. There are also multiple discovered checks coming. If after queen f5, if this knight moves, we have the move knight to e6 check, and on king to h4, g3 is Cecchino La Schlamba, and nothing else really saves the day either. So black is completely lost in any case. Probably knight e6, followed by a follow-up as well with these checks, or even this check first, followed by this check if the king retreats, are likely good enough to win as well. So in any case, the most concrete, in case I'm wrong about that, is just knight to queen to d3 check or queen to c2 check, followed by queen f5. That should be enough. Let's look at another one. The next one shouldn't be hard to see. Obviously, at this point, if you're not seeing the pattern, then we're worried about you. But another one that shows the king is castled, yet the same type of tactics exist. Bishop takes f7 check. Brilliant. And in this one, the king's best choice is definitely to take, as running doesn't really help. We're still bringing this knight to e6. And after king takes f7, the follow-up here is what defines this position as Fischer's trap, I believe, because Bobby Fischer maybe used this tactic a couple times, or hey, I don't know. Sometimes people just name positions after famous players because it sounds sexier, but the bottom line is you're aware of the pattern. You see the repeating idea of taking advantage of the weakened f7 and e6 squares, and the move you're about to see here is gonna make you have a little party. You might even do a little dance in your chair after you see this this sexy follow-up. Knight to e6, booyah. Look at this. We first sacrifice the bishop, taking advantage of f7, and then sacrifice the knight, taking advantage of e6. The themes tie so well together. The fact is we're trapping the queen and winning, and the only way to stop it is to take the knight, which in turn allows check and mate. Nothing too complicated to it. Bam, slam, thank you, ma'am. Next problem. Finally, our last one, even for advanced players, if it wasn't for the order in which we've done the positions in this video, would even be difficult for advanced players. Again, this is being categorized, classified under the Fischer's trap idea. Knowing that you've already seen these ideas happen a few times, you probably will have an easier time finding this one. But it isn't that obvious, because at this position it seems as though the black king is completely safe and is castled. The rook is also on f8, guarding f7, the critical square. So what kind of tactics could white really have here? Well, the answer is still pretty darn good ones. Bishop takes b3 check, exclam. And if the king runs, we still have this move knight to e6, taking advantage of the pinned d-pawn, trapping the queen. Notice that the queen has no escape squares here. And after king takes f7, again, Fischer's trap comes into play, knight to e6. It shouldn't need to be explained that the queen is trapped. That's the key idea here, and so the only thing that black can do is take with the king. The follow-up is pretty obvious. We play the move queen to d5 check, and after king f5, e6 check, king f6 gets checkmated in one move. Pretty nice way to finish the game. King to g4 might take another two moves. Let's see. We'll give a little Chekhovsky, and let's checkmate with the pawn, because, hey, it's a little bit more fun than checkmating with the queen on g5, right? Let's be honest. The idea here is that you're recognizing common tactics that occur around the weakened f7 and e6 squares, whether the king is castled or not. And the theme that tends to be consistent as far as when these tactics work for white is a lack of development for your opponent / cramped position where the pieces are sort of fighting over squares. You notice that when the rooks aren't connected and when the pieces are cramped, these types of things occur more often, and that's what allows this knight to e6 move to be so devastating and actually work as far as trapping the queen goes. And so this goes back to the basics you learn. It's funny how the fundamentals build on advanced concepts, right, everybody? That really, this is why you don't like your pieces on the back rank. This is why developing is so important. And you can also criticize, if you had to guess in this position what black's last move was, what do you think it is? Pause your clock and think about it. The move was knight to a5. In a lot of positions, black is, it was knight a5 the move before white's pawn was on e4 and black's knight was here. Knight a5 was played to try to win the bishop pair, but after e5, kicking this knight to e8, Fischer recognized the lack of coordination in black's camp, and that's what allowed this tactic to be devastating. So if black hadn't played knight a5, this e5 followed by bishop takes f7 tactic wouldn't have existed. Black could have played a more solid move and tried to develop his queenside instead. So very good lesson learned. Before we move on completely from this theme, let's see one more tactic that's similar to the gals from black's perspective, as we always try to be equal here. And by equal, obviously, we're showing you that the tactics do occur for both sides. As we talked about, it is f7, e6. Of course, f2, e3 are also the opposites of black's weaknesses for white. Here the move is knight takes e4, double exclam, unleashing the discovery we saw in the Legals mate and the tactic to follow. Obviously, taking the queen would ring and ding ding, and there's nothing else black can do besides capture the knight here, which actually allows an even better tactic that hopefully you can see here that has to do with the pattern we saw. Even better than taking here is actually to give this check on f2 and then take the undefended queen on d1. But in any case, even taking the bishop on g5 there with the queen is sufficient for a pretty crushing advantage. Note that this move is interesting, but after I play bishop takes d8 and you give this check, you're actually not devastating me as far as delivering a killer blow. And is that amount of material justifying with those checks? Probably not. So be careful when you recognize these tactics that you don't play too fast. Knight g4 looks like a fun little way to take advantage of it, but is actually not sufficient and would likely be losing the game after losing the queen there. So knight takes e4 is the way to go here. Let's move on to our next theme, which I'm classifying as the removal of the defender of a castle position, in particular the f6 pony, taking the pony for a ride there. The idea here is that you can naturally develop a lot of mating nets when you have a pawn structure with a pawn on e5. We've talked about that when you have a pawn chain and it ends with a pawn on e5, by definition, there's not a knight on f6, which allows for different types of mating nets, including the Greek gift sacrifice, which is one that we covered a few videos ago, if you remember. So This position is one where you don't have a structure that supports a kingside attack, but nonetheless, tactics can still occur over there. And when you look for the removal of the defender, which is a basic tactical pattern, of course, we learned way back in the beginning of this Patterns Everyone Must Know series, then you can find other great tactics. The winning move here for white is the brilliant knight to d5, double exclam. Immediately attacking the queen, which of course is a problem by itself, but no matter what black does, really we have much higher stakes at our that we're playing for here. We have much higher stakes that we're playing for. If black takes with the pawn, we eliminate this knight on f6 and deliver the goods next move. Taking with the knight, of course, would allow us to land the eagle immediately. So likely black's best move is to take this knight and simply lose the queen. So you're looking at a position where black has two minor pieces for the queen, but of course this is an easily lost position. White should have no trouble winning this position up a queen. So again, recognize when you have tactical pressure, tactical tension, when you have pieces facing the king side, and if there's only one piece defending checkmate, tactics may not always occur against that piece. They may not always exist, but you always have to look for them. I'll say that again. If there's one piece defending a concrete threat like checkmate, such a powerful threat, you have to try to consider every possible way to take advantage of it. It doesn't mean you want to give yourself delusions of grandeur and convince yourself that every sacrifice works, but you're sort of morally obligated as a chess player to be aware of the tactics that can occur when there's only one piece guarding such a powerful threat. That's the way I look at it. It's like you sort of have to look at everything, and the majority of your games you'll look at things and there won't really be tactics like that, but the fact that you're looking for them and you're aware of the patterns is really important, because when it does occur, that's when you can deliver it and win really nice chess games. So again, knight to d5, brilliant, followed by eliminating the defender and delivering the goods here. Let's see one more of this type of pattern. This position is actually extremely tricky, and for those of you who actually did make an effort to solve it right away, you're awesome, and if you did, you're really awesome. If you didn't, but the fact you made the effort, that's great. For those of you who haven't, I really recommend you pause it and try to solve it. Even advanced players who are kind of just watching this to enjoy the video but aren't really trying that hard, thinking the problems are too easy, I wonder if you really solve this one. The winning move here for white, if you haven't, you can pause your video one last time, is bishop to c7, double exclam, a brilliant move taking advantage of black's last move, which you can guess was knight to a5. You see how awareness of these mating net patterns and how powerful these different types of tactical tricks are, and how our pieces can coordinate in different ways. Awareness of all those ideas really allows you to find brilliant moves. And this move, bishop c7, is nothing short of pure awesomeness. If the queen moves, we're just picking up a knight. It's that simple. Game over, red, we're over, we're up a piece. Obviously, when the queen takes, the key follow-up is knight takes d5, unleashing a discovery on the queen, a double attack, in fact. And when the queen moves, we eliminate the knight on f6 with check and deliver the goods Hollywood style. Let's look at that again. Booyah, Smashtown, instant replay, ESPN, in your face, camel cake. Pretty cool, right? I like that one, and it shows full board awareness that these tactical patterns occur on advanced levels when you're aware of the entire board and how the pieces are coordinating together. The next few positions are ones that I'm classifying under general destruction of the castle position. They don't really fall under any particular category, but they are very common patterns, and so they have to be listed somewhere. They're not a tactical pattern as far as a pin or a skewer or a interference tactic, and they're not necessarily mating nets in the truest sense either, but they are general destruction patterns that do occur, and so they are important for you to be aware of. We're going to kind of mix it up a little bit. First one here is white to play, and the obvious move is bishop takes h6. You have a lot of pieces facing your opponent's king, and it's time to break through and end the game. G takes h6. Should be noted that probably the best move is something like maybe 98 or even 97, bringing more defenders over. Black is in big trouble nonetheless, but this move just leads to a forced loss. I have two pawns for the piece. I'm threatening to check here and then pick up the knight with check after king h8. Bishop d7 is the only natural move to try to defend it, and white has several ways to continue the attack in a winning way. Knight g5, I believe, is winning, but the most clear and concrete to follow up a sacrifice like this to remember is knight to g3. This move is very powerful. It threatens knight h5, which again would remove this defender so that we could deliver checkmate. And it should be noted that even if this rook moves in a way that tries to create an escape route for black, or even a few squares, this move is still devastating because we threaten checkmate on g7, and after he takes, a knowledge of a previous pattern we did, which is how the queen and bishop coordinate together, should allow you to stop your clock and solve this one. Okay, if you have it, I'm going to go ahead. We lead with the bishop, of course, and then retreat with the bishop, and finish with mate. This was the one I wanted to show you because it's similar to the pattern that we talked about earlier in the in this video series, but also queen h7 check followed by queen h8 will do the job. The reason why I showed the other one first is because if we were in a position where the same exact situation was occurring, but this bishop wasn't on e7, this check and check wouldn't work because the king could escape. It's hypothetical, I know, but it's still good to be aware that a pattern you learned earlier in the series would work in a position like this, even if queen h7 and queen h8 wasn't good enough to end the game. So once again, let's go to Sacktown, population us, and if he moves there, we'll just take. Defending the knight is his only option, and we're going to win the game shortly. This next pattern is not another example of a bishop sacrifice to lead the way, but simply a recognition of how powerful your pieces are already placed. White to play and win in one move. I've heard it referred to as the Bronstein tactic because it uses a pin that he was famous for in a couple particular games, but the idea is very simple. Queen to g6 is Ouchtown population black. Pawn is pinned, no way to stop queen takes g7. King f8 would walk into checkmate in one move, and there's just about nothing black can do. Knight h5 is the only way to actually postpone mate for one move, and we'll pick up this queen and happily tap dance our way to victory. Tap dance, that sounds cool. Let's remember that one. All right, next one. This next position is similar to our last one, only in the first move, but I'm sorry if you hadn't paused your video yet, I just told you the answer, but it's not really the same type of pattern. It's not the Greco's mate either, one that was sort of similar with the knight, bishop, and queen working together, sort of under its own category here. Queen to g6, simply threatening checkmate, and we're pretty excited about that fact. So black has only one way to postpone it, which I guess clearly is to take the knight, and after knight takes, removing the rook from this square would not help, as giving check and check would lead to mate, a very similar pattern or net that reminds us of the Greek gift sacrifice. And so the only other move is knight to f6, which after taking here renews the checkmate in a couple different ways, and black is completely lost. I guess I shouldn't say only move is knight f6, as black does have the option to give up the queen, but if he's given up the first lady, we're going to be okay in this position, I think. Let's look at another one. Our last one that has to do with this queen g6 pattern, as you can see, I'm sort of desperate grouping these together. I'm sure you guys are learning a lot from all these positions, but my OCD brain refuses me to teach randomly. I try to bring them together in a way that makes sense. So again, this queen g6 pattern really has nothing to do other than the fact that the first moves have always been queen g6. Otherwise, the patterns really don't have that much to do with each other. But in any case, the first move is queen to g6, and our threat is pretty clear. They have to take the knight. And now the next few moves are pretty complicated, so even for advanced players, if you didn't pause your video, then shame on you. The next move is bishop to e5, a great move that threatens checkmate on g7, and you'll notice that black only has one way to defend it, which is rook f7. And now we can continue with bishop takes g7, opening up a potential mating net with the queen and bishop that we're so familiar with. So he takes it, and instead of even going after the queen, we want more, we want the whole thing. We play the move bishop takes d5 check first. And in this case, after queen takes d5, rook to e8 check is enough to deliver the goods. It should be noted that bishop takes d5 check would allow king f8, and perhaps the attack is not 100% clear. Queen h5 keeps the threat of this open, as well as queen h8, and the position is still actually completely winning for white, which is what I have prepared on that. But if you don't like that, everything we've seen up to now also works with simply giving this check, and after king takes, king to h7, queen back to h5, and then taking on d5 might actually be the most accurate way to rock your opponent's world like a little country girl. So let's do it again. Queen to g6, booyah, takes g5, bishop to e5. Noted should be that queen to d7 or queen to e7 both fail to bishop takes d5 check. The queen can't take it because of mate, and if the king moves to the h-file, we see a similar pattern that we've seen before in this video series. If you know the name of it, then you're awesome. A little test for you. So there you go, another queen g6, awesome move, and let's move on to our next theme. Our next one that I'm classifying under general destruction is one that I guess perhaps could have been shown along with the f6 pony tricks, but it wasn't a clear tactic that to me was just having to do with the removal of the knight on f6, which is a key part of this, but the key is recognition of the whole board, and in this case it has to do with the queen and bishop battery. A mating net that I said I wouldn't truly cover in the purest sense, but one that we're seeing a lot of queen and bishop coordinations in some of these general destructions of the castle position. In this position, the move, of course, is e5, brilliant exclam move, attacking a pinned piece, and not only is that piece pinned and an important piece because it's a piece, all pieces are important, remember that, but it's also defending against checkmate on h7, so despite the fact that it's pinned, it's also very important from that perspective, and after they take on e5, we can take with the knight, notice should be that taking with the rook is not as good, because after they take back and we take f6, there's the move e4, and though this position is probably pretty good for white, having 2 pieces for the rook, it's not 100% clear. So the most accurate thing to do is to simply take on e5 with the knight and renew the threat of bishop takes f6, as in a case like this, if your opponent does find e4, both knight takes and bishop takes e7 are enough to go on to a winning position. One more time for good measure, e5. I know this is more of a general one, but it's still something I wanted to show here. They take back, we take here, again, e4, and this move order would allow us to either take here, or I think the most simple here is to take with the knight, so that we're up a piece, and if they take back, knight takes f6 check, followed by queen h7 is enough to end the game. Full knowledge of how your pieces are coordinating and the power of a queen and bishop battery is what will allow you to find tactics like this. Next problem. Switching sides real quick, back to the dark side. This is one that I probably could have listed in the weakened fee and kettled positions installment when we did that in the part 4, mating nets part 4. But I didn't, and I felt the reason I didn't is because I thought it was more of a really great example of removal of the defender, and it is a mating net, of course, but it's more removal of the defender and sort of a general destruction thing. But in any case, it also takes advantage of the weakened light squares, obviously. Black's winning move here is rook to e1 check, double exclam, and after rook takes e1, bishop takes d4. What should be noted is, obviously I can't take because of checkmate, but I can't really do anything else either, because defending the queen in some way doesn't help, because the queen is already pinned. We're looking at lights out, baby girl. And if rook to e3, of course we can take e3, and the pin is simply renewed, and the threat is unstoppable unless white just wants to throw more pieces in the way, right? But in any case, noted should be that bishop takes d4 does not work right away, because after rook takes d4, rook e1 check, I can actually take with this rook and haven't done anything but give me a whole bunch of pieces. So the move order is critical here. Rook e1 check first, queen can't take it, and after rook takes e1, bishop takes d4, the game is over. Finally, we're going to bring this mating nets installment and the patterns everyone must know series to a close with 3 examples of the queen side castle destruction. It wouldn't be fair for us to talk about all this destruction of the castle position and not show the queen side, right? Hey, right? Don't leave the queen side out. And in this one here, it looks similar to the Bowden's mate, the crisscross mate, but it's not the bishop delivering the goods in the end, but rather it's the recognition of how the rook and bishop coordinate. White's obvious move here is queen takes c6 check, and after b takes c6, rook to b8 is mate. Recognition of all your pieces and what they're attacking is the key in these examples, and queen takes c6 followed by rook to b8 should be good enough. The thing about these last couple examples I'm going to show you after this one is that I'd like to say that you can reference back to when we did the missing f and h pawns around the castle position that allowed different types of patterns like Greco's mate and the different coordinations of the knight, queen, and bishop, and examples where I sort of clarified that it was about the missing f and h pawns that was the key to those mating nets working. I would say that the last couple queenside ones, you can kind of say are similar to that, because we haven't done a lot of queenside checkmates, and that you're trying to remove the pawns and open up the files and diagonals for your pieces to take care of business. And so this one, along with the other 2, I guess you could just remember that type of idea of taking advantage of a king castled, like we did on the king side with the missing f and h pawns, is also working on the queen side. That's all I wanted to say, is just kind of remind you of that. Here, white to play, and the answer should be pretty obvious. Queen takes c6 check, b takes c6, rook to b8, and the other rook comes in. Nothing but a G thing, baby. Rook to c7 might be the only way for him to postpone the checkmate, but a simple move, even like retreating the queen, is enough to just be completely better here. And even a move like rook takes b7 followed by this check, and this check might pick up the queen, but it looks to me like that allows the king to run to d7. So we don't want to play rook takes b7, but rather just accept the fact that we've won a pawn, retreat happily to either e4 or a4, and be pretty psyched. So this is not officially a mating net because of rook to c7, but this pattern of removing the b pawn, like we saw in the last video to open up the b file for the rook, or sorry, the last puzzle, and removing the b pawn is the key to this mating net working. So next problem. Our next one is a tricky one and a ton of fun, as they say. The move is knight to c6 check, exclam. Obviously king to a8 would walk into checkmate on a7 by the queen. And so after b takes a6, there's You can play the rook check first, but there's no real need. White can simply give up the queen immediately and bring both of the towers of power over to the queen side and deliver the goods with a 5-move checkmate. Let's take a look one more time. Knight check, Chekaruski, Chekalina, and we are singing the La Bamba. Okay, well, I think this is going to bring our mating nets installment, our mating nets segment of the Patterns Everyone Must Know video series to a close. See you around.